all of the poor choices of women are celebrated, right? And so you're a sex worker, let's celebrate it.
Yeah.
You made this bad decision, let's celebrate it. You sell yourself on OnlyFans, let's celebrate it. It's now all celebrated.
Yeah.
And you said there's no longer any consequences. And you say that these women end up, I think you said, gaslighting themselves into promoting this behavior as this liberation. When you look at it and you're like, well, who are you kidding?
Yeah.
You're actually, you're not taking accountability for poor decisions, and then you're reaping whatever you sow.
That's the sad part. And this is somebody who, as a woman myself, I just realized if I was to make endless poor decisions for my mind, body and soul, there would be a positive praise outcome. So we're almost modifying women's behavior to become self-destructive. If I gained a lot of weight and I would totally stop taking care of my body, I would be celebrated body positivity. And that's not good for me. You and I both know it's not good for us not to run every day, or not to, it's not good for us. Or if I sleep around with the wrong men and I just go and get an abortion, rather than exercising more discretion with who I lay down with and actually taking responsibility and think, you know what, if I sleep with you and have a baby with you, I don't want to have a baby with you, so bye, I'm not talking to you. Instead, it's like sex, an abortion if need be. I'm celebrated for having that choice. And if I want to then, sell my body, my personal sexual life, which is so sacred and sanctified, if I then make it a commodity, I'm seen as a really successful entrepreneur. When really what I'm doing is selling my soul. I am putting a price tag on my soul and my energy. And no matter how progressive we come, there is women who sell their body to some extent. I'm not blaming them. I'm sure there's lots of trauma and there's lots of financial issues or whatever it is. But when we make our body a commodity, we essentially remove the sanctity of sex. And therefore it makes it harder to actually see how important sex is. And therefore we give it frivolously, and then we can't connect with people, because the deepest form of connection should be sex. But if I'm giving it to this uncle, that friend, and that online, how am I able to preserve the spirituality behind it? So I'm basically selling all the parts of women that make them beautiful. I'm now turning it into a product. And therefore we are more oppressed than we've ever been, but we've labeled it as liberty.
But the feminists celebrate that as female empowerment.
What is empowering about being $5.99 for a dirty man that is probably doing all sorts with your pictures? I've never understood that. I am now the customer to this dirty old man or this creepy young boy. He's my customer. So now I have to please him. I basically work for him. So I'm taking probably the most perverse members of men in society and becoming a slave to their desires. And I'm labeling that as empowering. Because if you take respectable men, they probably wouldn't want me to do that. So I'm taking the worst cohort of men and becoming a product for their desires and labeling it as empowering. And I'm not judging the women. It's a dual issue, both men and women, because I'm sure there's financial issues, but it's just the glorification of it that I find insane and sad.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? From a man's perspective?
Well, and also on that note, like you take it all the way and it becomes, I'm selling, lurid videos on OnlyFans. But if you take it part way, then you have women that create social media accounts that get attention based on certain types of behaviors. And so there's a spectrum of what you're talking about. Because a lot of people might listen and say, well, I would never do that. Yeah. But now everybody's on that spectrum to a certain extent.
To some extent.
Because let's talk about that, because women get rewarded by certain behaviors online that you say promotes narcissism. Yeah. When sometimes they're the first one to say men are the narcissists. Yeah. But I want to dive in and see, because this digital availability of everything affects the sexes differently. Yeah. And so for women, is it that spectrum of I post a photo on Instagram, or I'm the OnlyFans account here, or I'm making porn, and like where does that spectrum lie, and what are the different behaviors, and what does it promote people doing?
The moment you can weaponize any area of that spectrum, you fall into the more antisocial narcissistic category. And what I mean by that is I might be not, posting too much, but the moment I weaponize it, the moment I am annoyed with my partner and I want a new partner, or the moment I want to kind of get some extrinsic kind of thrills, cheap thrills, and I then use Instagram as almost a device to fill that void or fill that empty, low self-esteem, then I'm starting to fall on the spectrum. It's not really what you post, it's the intention behind it. And if there's an element of I'm using this device to fill a hole or to add self-esteem, I'm essentially relying on, it's like eating junk food to fuel for nutrients. It won't do it. Yeah, all it will do is create you a feedback loop, or a loop of desiring more likes and comments and creating more fake self-esteem, when really what women used to do is have to work on their nurturing side in order to be valuable. They had to work on their skills to be valuable. We had grandmothers who would be able to sew a dress for us. I'm not saying I can do that. I'm still very useless on that sense, but you know, they would be able to cook you something from scratch, and they'd be able to sew something, or they'd be so useful. Now we're making ourselves less useful, and just essentially just an object of desire, and therefore we have temporary value, because we all know that looks fade. And so essentially we're making women almost replaceable, because if you're just a pretty face and you're adding no other value, men are going to replace us with AI. Whereas if you add some intrinsic value, you're irreplaceable as a woman. My grandma, my mother, your mother, I'm sure your grandma, irreplaceable women. Yeah. But unfortunately, if I'm just a pretty face, I'm so replaceable by robots. Essentially, you'll be replaced by robots, and at least robots actually listen and are nice to you.
So Jim Rickards has just recorded a video that's not available to anyone in the public, and he's going to be talking about how this upcoming recession is going to be fast.